Hey all, No Null here. I said I'd make a theory video again if something interesting actually happened, and surprisingly enough, only 4 videos into the new year, and already something pretty hype has happened, and has been teased. And also, I'm voicing a video for once. I don't know how good this is actually going to sound, but we'll see. First time for everything. SMG4 in 2025 has started off very strong in my opinion, with the exception of the remastered 64 episode. There feels like there's been an active effort to include more underused side characters in videos, and we've gotten some nice backstory and development for characters who don't get such treatment very often. But by far, the latest episode, which came out today, is the best that the year has to offer, and not just because it was entirely focused on side characters, with no main cast character appearing like Mario, which has very rarely happened before. That nothing to do with that. To my complete surprise, they have begun to set up the next story arc for the series by the seams of things. Due to the inclusion of a major hint from one line as to what might be coming, as well as expanding on stuff we've previously seen in videos from last year that were focused on a specific character. So getting on to that, last year we got 2 videos that were focused on the character of Karen and her relationship with her kids, and we see that she's a very dedicated mother who will do anything to protect her children. This was reaffirmed in the latest video. We also learned about a bit about her backstory. We got a glimpse into it. She used to be an assassin who worked for an organisation which we now know is called Hitman Inc. by the seams of it. This explains why she's so skilled in combat, as we've seen many times in this series. She left her assassin life behind after she had her kids, but it seems the organisation has been trying to convince her to work for them again, and the fact that this organisation was referenced again in the latest video probably indicates it will be of some importance in the upcoming story arc, which is almost certainly going to be related to events from this video. But that's not all that was teased in today's video. An obvious question about Karen's backstory that has never been addressed in the series is the noticeable absence of the father of her children. It's never before been brought up, and if there was ever to be a Karen arc, me and many others have always suggested that the best angle to take with such a story is to explore this mystery, and to my surprise, they're actually going in that direction, with a line said in the latest video near the end where Karen explicitly references the father of her children, which was like a massive holy shit moment when I was reacting to it. What we learn about the father is very little, as this episode merely serves to set up some of the plot points that are no doubt going to be coming up in the next arc, such as the aforementioned character stuff and the existence of the organisation, but we can glean some details about the father based on what we hear Karen say. Karen talks about how Swag was, quote, reckless and chaotic during the video, but then she compares that being reckless and chaotic to the father of her children. So there's multiple ways we can interpret and theorise about what this line suggests about the father. Perhaps the father constantly endangered her kids, and we know she's very protective of them, and so she left him for that reason. It's even possible that it was his endangerment of the kids that made her so protective of them in the first place. As for how he was possibly endangering the kids, perhaps he was a fellow assassin working for Hitman Inc., and this was how the two met. And since being an assassin is dangerous work, obviously, it follows that the father may have been putting the kids in danger while performing his job, and maybe it was this that convinced Karen to leave her assassin life behind. But that all assumes the father is still alive. Perhaps it was his recklessness that got him killed, and Karen maybe holds a grudge against him for being so reckless and and dying and leaving them behind. But maybe she still loves him. And obviously from that there's an obvious direction you could take the story, where Hitman Inc. tasks Karen with another job, but this time the target is the person who killed the father, and obviously this would put Karen in a tough spot and test her character, as she has to choose between, being selfish and seeking revenge, or putting her kids first and leaving such grudges behind to focus on what truly matters. There's a lot of potentially interesting character stuff they could do with Karen if they went in that direction, but ultimately a lot of this is just wild speculation based on very little evidence, because obviously we have very little so far. But a Karen arc is definitely coming, as that line about the father was very blatant foreshadowing, like that's very obviously a hint for something that's going to come in the future. Though since we're only 4 episodes into the year so far, I'd expect some unconnected normal episodes to release before like the next video that continues this plot line. Like, I would be surprised if this story arc immediately starts like in the next video and like we get a continuous like few episodes of story. I'd be surprised if that happens straight away. All I know for sure is that the yearly SMG4 movie that always releases before May will almost certainly be like the conclusion to this Karen-centered arc. Well, I think that's pretty obvious at this point. That's usually always the case, and not the arc at the beginning of the year. Always concludes with the movie at the beginning of the year that always comes out since 2019. 2020. Obviously, there's one final thing to address before we end things off here, and obviously I don't have too much to say because we have very little in terms of like hints and like evidence to go off. But there's obviously the question of Mr. Puzzles and Marty, and the roles that they may play in this upcoming arc. So obviously Marty was heavily involved in the Karen focus episode from last year called We Must Kill Mario, which is sort of the like beginning of this possible story arc, basically, because that's where they set up like the organization and stuff. And obviously Marty's current status as like a crime boss antagonist who's sort of just hanging around at the moment causing trouble, like that certainly means like that he could work as he could function as a side antagonist in this upcoming arc. If there's like a main antagonist who we don't know yet, like he could easily be the side antagonist, since he's a criminal and he's had history with Karen before, so he could work as an antagonist. Obviously, whoever this main antagonist is, we don't know. Could be the father, or it could be the individual who possibly murdered the father. We don't know very much, obviously. If that vengeance arc idea I proposed earlier happens, perhaps they could give Marty a character arc where he has to learn to give up on revenge, as currently his motivation appears to be that he wants revenge against Mario and the cast for the events of WotV 2023. But then there's also Mr. Puzzles. We know he will return this year based on what they've said about WotV 2024. And also he's just so popular, I'd be shocked if they went like that long before bringing him back. He's probably going to be back by the next movie, I would assume. And obviously that could mean he will play a role in this upcoming arc. What might that look like? Personally, I don't think he would work as a main antagonist, since he's been defeated 3 times last year. And so I'm hoping he'll be a comic relief side antagonist alongside Marty and then there'll be a main antagonist who's like the actual big bad. But, that might not happen. After all, he's very popular, and so making him the main antagonist could happen for all we know. So, but obviously, if he was to be the main antagonist, we know that he is currently held up in prison, so they would have to address that first. And so, linking back to that vengeance arc idea I came up with earlier, what if the person who murdered the father of her kids turned out to be none other than Puzzles, in like an out of left field plot twist? And also, I don't know how exactly that would work and when that would have happened, but let's just go with it for now. Obviously, if that plot twist happened, Hitman Inc. Could use that knowledge to convince Karen to go assassinate Puzzles by breaking into the prison. To add to this, Swag was shown to be guarding Mr. Puzzles, and they did just set up a possible rivalry between Karen and Swag, and at the very least they interacted quite a lot in this recent episode. So maybe that could be setting up something like that character dynamic they showed in the recent episode, but who knows for sure. Either way, if Mr. Puzzles gets involved in this arc, they will have to explain how he escapes from prison somehow and who busts him out, because he's probably not going to break out by himself. Lastly, I should probably address Hitman Inc. and the role they could play. Obviously, this organisation is presented as very shady, but it's not necessarily presented as evil. After all, they wanted Marty killed, who was a dangerous crime boss, but we have no idea if this is because they are an organisation dedicated to the maintenance of peace, or if they are an organisation that is just hired by third parties to assassinate people of their choosing, and Marty just so happened to be like one of these targets, and so therefore it's more of like a neutral sort of organisation that will do whatever it's paid to do. So it could be that sort of thing, we don't know. So it's possible, therefore, that they could be the antagonists of the arc, or they could be just a side antagonist, or they could be an ally to Karen, or they could be just a neutral force that doesn't really help or hinder them. We don't really know. Anything is possible. Since obviously we know very little about this organisation, it's quite mysterious. The last thing I want to address though, since we're possibly getting more Karen lore soon, they could potentially link her somehow with the character of Risk from Sunset Paradise. We still don't know what's happened with Risk since the events of Sunset Paradise, as her ending was left open since she was the only villain who was able to escape being arrested or killed. And so, and she's a thief type character, as well as a cat, and obviously Karen is a cat character who's an assassin type character, and so those two could mesh well in a story. That could make sense. So they could find a way to involve her, like Risk, into this upcoming arc, possibly. They have been focusing on like this minor plot point about Karen from last year, so who's to say they can't bring other like plot points into this? They seem to be making an active effort to do more character stuff and possibly focus on some underdeveloped plot points, so who knows? We'll have to wait and see.